Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. So next up, we're gonna get after these legs and gonna try to get a little bit more done in this video than we got in the last one. I made a trip to my local hardwood dealer, Glacier Hardwoods, and unfortunately their shipment hadn't come in yet for the African mahogany, and I could not get the 16/4. And I tried lots of places. So irregardless, we're going to be doing a lamination. So there's gonna be lots of milling of the 8/4 stuff. But as I said in the last video, we're not going to show me doing a whole bunch of milling and stuff. So let me get this stuff all milled up and I'll show you where we're at. Just like that, all milled up. I ended up with one board that I was concerned about before I went to milling, and I really hope it shows up on camera. But the color is just way off, and you can see how light that board is versus, say, this one, where you can really, see all the color and the grain in it. So my first inclination was to order some more lumber, but that would be like next week before I could get that in. I do have one more board up there I could replace it with, but then I don't have the stock that I need for the rails. And I have a natural location for this to go in a back corner. It's essentially in a corner of a room anyway. You're never going to see this leg. So I'm going to run with it. Not my first choice, but I need to keep moving on this project. So next up, all I'm going to do is match all these together, get them glued up. I kept each board together, so the color in each leg will be, pretty spot on. So glue up, that's what's next. I really like these little ink rollers for doing large glue ups like this, just an easy way to spread the glue out nicely. I've had this one for many years. You just got to be sure to clean it when you're done. Just get a little bit of pressure on here, make sure they don't slide by each other too much. These are all still oversized, so by quite a bit. So it's okay if they move a little bit, but I can save myself a little work. All right, just get a little crank on those, and I'll come over the top. Okay, we'll just let those cure up tonight. I'll get the other ones done, and I'll see you all in the morning. And I'll get all these trimmed to final size, and we'll start taking a look at some joinery in these legs. All right, guys, confession time. I absolutely was not happy with the legs and the way they turned out. These are two of those legs, one of which the color is just completely wrong, and the other one just had some defects that I couldn't work around. Unfortunately, I had some family issues in Oregon that I had to go deal with, so I've actually been away from this project for probably a couple of weeks. But while I was in Oregon, I was in Eugene, Oregon, and I hit a hardwood dealer there called Crosscut, and they were fantastic, and they actually had some 16/4, and I bought a stick of it to come back and get these two legs. And these two legs are from the original. And this one just turned out awesome. I was super happy with this leg. You can't even find the seam where I glued it up. So awesome. This leg looks great on its face, but the edge, I don't know if that's going to show up or not. Man, it's not there. So obviously I can use this in that back corner, and it's not a big deal. But when I was cutting the new 16/4, I cut a piece of veneer off, and I'm actually going to veneer this on and Then I'll flush trim it, and then the planer is still set up for this square. So I'll go ahead and run it this veneer side down, and it'll all be perfect. And the only glue line you're going to see will be on the inside face of the back corner, so it just won't matter. The other issue that I was struggling with, and I love this front rail. This front rail just turned out awesome, but as you can see, the color match is just horrible. So I'm going to actually move this to the back, and I picked up another piece of lumber with better color, and I've already remade the front because you guys have already seen me do that, so I'm not going to show you that again. So yeah, that's what I'm going to get after. I'm going to go ahead and laminate this veneer on my seam side on this one piece and get that planed up, and then I think we're going to get our first bit of joinery in and maybe get this thing standing up. Okay, so there's that veneer all glued on. I just used one of the original legs that I'm not going to use as a clamping caul. I probably over clamped it, but that's okay. I'm going to let this cure up for a little while, and then I'll come back and flush trim it all with just a little trim router, and then my legs will finally be good to go. Before we can move on to joinery, I also need to cut the upper rails and the side rails. And it'll make sense when we get there, but because I want my rails set back 1/8 of an inch, I need to domino all the rails first and then readjust the domino and then domino the legs. So I'm gonna break all that stock down off camera, oversize, and get it down, and then we'll go after the joinery, and we should have at least a basic carcass up by the end of this video. Okay, so I wanted to kind of give a close-up view of this and show it, but there is that end. You can just barely see the veneer up there, but on the sides, if I can get it to not white out on me, you can't even tell. So it's a super thin veneer, but it is a shop-made veneer, and that will certainly be great for that back corner leg. And it blends in nicely with the rest. So next up is the side panels, which are going to get curves in them, and you can see I've drawn a line. I actually made a template since I had 4 of them, and it just made consistency from one to the next really easy. The upper rails are smaller, but that groove goes through this curve. So I'm actually going to go to the table saw and cut this groove, and I'll come up about 1/4 of an inch above this line, which means that I'm going to have the dado stack pretty far out of the table by it's all done, and I'll take it in a few passes. Now the lower rail, this curve is on the bottom, and my groove goes in the top. So this will just be 1/4 of an inch deep. On the back rail, the top and the bottom both get a groove, but it'll just be 1/4 of an inch deep. So this one will have 1/4 inch deep groove, and the top rail will get 1/4 inch deep groove as well. But I'm not going to do any curves on the top of the back, so no issues there. I am going to do a curve on the top of the front, and that will get treated just like these guys, but it won't be quite as dramatic. So I will cut that one as I'm cutting these and slowly raising the blade. So that's what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go take care of the easy cuts first, set my dado stack to 1/4 of an inch, and get those grooves put in. Okay, so I've run a test to confirm that it fits the plywood nicely. I've set the fence up to be centered, and I've dummy proofed it for me and marked which side get the grooves. All right, so I hope this shows up on camera. I ran my stack up pretty much all the way because it's a small stack. And I've measured the depth of that groove that I cut, and that gives me that 1/4 of an inch off of the top. So that panel will sit in there flat, even though it's got a curve and I only have to cut a flat panel. So next up, I'm going to go cut all these curves so that I know exactly where to place my dominoes when we do the joinery. Also a correction, the front rail just gets a gentle sweeping curve in it. There is no groove in the front rail. Okay, so on a project this size, I had to get kind of creative to get enough room. This thing is just monstrously big. So like I said earlier, I have my rails laid up here, and this is the front. And I want an 1/8 of an inch setback on the legs. So I have to come through and cut all the dominoes in the rail pieces first. Then I'll readjust the height on the domino and come back and cut all the legs. But to do that, I have to set it all up. So I have all of this front set up for dominoes, 8x50s, and I'm going to do 2 in each rail. And I'll do the same on the sides and the back, etc. And so I'm going to go ahead and cut these rails, and then I'm going to set this aside and do the same thing to the back, and then I'm going to do the same thing to the sides. And when all that's done, then I can dry fit it all together. Well, after I reset the depth and cut all the legs. But when I set these up, I'm marking for the legs, so I already know where they go. They'll be fairly quick to cut the legs. And then we'll get it all dry fit, and I'll show you where we're at. Well, there it is, guys. First dry fit. I just got a couple of clamps on the ends to hold those in place. I don't have any clamps long enough to span, so we'll have to get creative on that. The next up, I'm going to create some dovetail set-ins here to help keep all this together. And I will do something on the bottom as well. I'm not 100% sure. As well as the back is going to get split. So the panels fit nicely and give it a little bit more support. I'm also going to lay out on the legs exactly where all the web frames go. And the web frames will be full width going all the way down, and then the drawer dividers, I'll put dados in those web frames, and we'll add the dividers in coming up, which should give us the structure we need to come back in and add drawers. But we're going to save some of that for the next video. I think that's going to wrap it up for this one, guys. I need to go get some Baltic birch plywood and get after making some web frame parts. So until next time, guys, take care.